Hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another sort of music kind of video. Today I'm taking you through my journey with one of my favourite bands, Japan. I've been doing quite a few videos going through my journey with David Bowie, and I plan to be doing some more of these sort of videos. Um, like I'll be doing some on Gary Newman and maybe some of the electronic sort of scene and maybe even some sort of darker kind of music. But today we're looking at Japan. Japan are a band that have been around for quite a while. People think of them as being like a new romantic sort of band from the 80s, but Japan started a long time before that. They were about in the sort of like mid to late 70s, so around about 76, 77, 78, around that kind of time. And they were a different sort of band. They were kind of started off like a sort of American punk, um, glam sort of rock, sort of art rock sort of band, and they were about then, but they were completely different when they first started. They're not American, by the way. They are a British band. Um, they're formed in, I believe, in London, but yeah, they are a British band, and they were sort of completely different. Now, I'd never really heard of them until I went to a concert with family members to see a band called the Blue Oyster Cult, which were kind of like a sort of British prog sort of rock sort of band that that were really quite successful. They weren't my cup of tea. I wasn't into that sort of music, the sort of prog scene music. I like some of it now to a point. Some of it still a little bit wishy washy with me, but I do like some of it. But yeah, my family went and said, "Do you want to come to this concert?" Because they had a spare ticket, and I was really young, guys. You know, I was no more than, I must be about 10, something like that, 11. So going to concerts this age wasn't quite a new thing to me. I'd already been to concerts. I've been to a venue in Hitchin called the Regal to see 10cc, which I went with my mum. But then I went to this concert, and they said, and the ticket was Blue Oyster Cult plus support. And when we got there, I think it's at Hammersmith we were at, I'm sure it was. It said Blue Oyster Cult and it says with Japan. I thought, Japan, I've never heard of them. Never heard of them at all. And they came on stage first, and they looked really odd because they had like really sort of big sort of hair. I mean, David Sylvian at this stage had quite long hair, and it was really sort of scraggly and long and kind of like, yeah, like a sort of New York sort of Dolls kind of image, like this American image. Now I've heard of New York Dolls because of the Old Grey Whistle test, and I think I might have seen them on there. But so I thought, okay, these look a bit different, and then they came on and they played their set, which is pretty much songs from their first sort of album, Adolescent Sex. Um, and as you can see, that was their image. That's what they came on and they looked like. And it was like, you know, that's exactly what they looked like when they came on. I thought, wow, okay, I don't like it. I really didn't like the music. I just thought, no, this is not me. Because I say at this time I was quite young, and I'd only just started to get into music. I was liking things like pub rock, things like Doctor Feelgood, all those kind of a bit of Slade. I quite like them. Um, who were sort of like around the sort of glam period. They were the sort of stuff that I was liking at the time. So this was a bit more different. It was, yeah, like I say, I class it myself as art rock. I don't class them. I've always classed Japan as art rock. Even in their electronic years, I still look at it as art rock. I had heard Roxy Music at this time. I'd heard some of their tracks and Sparks. I heard some of their music because they've been going for a little while, and I thought these were a little bit like that. They were not necessarily in sound, but that is sort of eccentric sort of thing. And I thought they are different. I didn't like the music or anything, but I came away from that concert thinking, do you know what? I didn't like Blue Oyster Cult at all. I thought they were fucking boring and terrible. And I just thought, no. I didn't like it. And I said to myself, well, uh, yeah, but at least Japan were different. You know, they had their own sort of, they were just kind of different and kind of unique. And then I totally forgot about them and didn't think about Japan at all. I went on in and followed my music taste for the next um, good couple of years or year or so. You know, my memory is not so fantastic anymore. Um, as I've got older, I seem to have a few memory problems. But I know this was in sort of like, it must have been around sort of 77, 78 time. I'm sure it was. So about a year or so ago, so I completely forgot about Japan. I did. I just, you know, I remember seeing them, but they were sort of off my radar, just simply because it wasn't my type of music. Like I said, I was into then, and then I started to get into post-punk, Ian Dury and the Blockheads, and Roxy Music. I will be doing some Roxy Music videos soon. Um, and I was listening to this sort of thing. And I was really into it because we used to go to a social club back in the day, and my mum used to work there, and we knew the people that owned it. And it was attached to my dad's work. He worked for British Aerospace, and it was a club called Bragby End, and we used to go there. And in the Russell Bar, the club, they used to have a jukebox, and I used to sit there on the Friday nights, Saturday nights, just listening to music and pumping it with 10p's and stuff and putting on Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick. And when I felt really naughty, I put the B-side on, that There Ain't Half Been Some Clever Bastards, which was the B-side. So I used to put it on because I used to feel right rebel putting it on. So I was into that kind of music, getting into, like I said, Roxy Music, Ian Dury and the Blockheads. I was a big fan. Dr. Feelgood still. I love Dr. Feelgood. I was lucky to see them at Hitchin because that was the deal I did with my mum. I was like, if I go to with her to see 10cc, if my band ever came, which was Dr. Feelgood time, we would go, and she got tickets for that. So I got to see Dr. Feelgood, and they were incredible. And so I completely and utterly sort of forgot about kind of Japan. And then I sort of discovered other bands sort of coming through. Um, uh, Joy Division was one of them. It was post-punk time, and a London band called The Sound, who I absolutely adore. And they were a lot more darker and heavier, and they had more synthesizers in it. And this was about a year or so away before I discovered Mr. Gary Newman. Of course, Bowie has been my obsession since my even before any of this. Bowie was the first record I bought. Bowie was the first sort of poster lad I have. I still got him on my wall today, as you may see there behind me from Ziggy Stardust. Um, yeah, I got into Bowie big style, and yeah, I didn't know about David's voice. You see, because that when I first saw them, he sounded uh, really sort of what's the sort of word I'm looking for? Not croaky, but harsh. It was a bit like, you know, if you think of Bonnie Tyler or Rod Stewart, even he was sounded like that when I saw them. It didn't sound like it did then. I had no idea that they had a music transition. But it was one day, and I went into my local Boots in town. It was a Saturday, and I was just rooting through records. I'd got a bit of money I'd saved up from my little job I had at that time, and I was going to treat myself to a new album. I'd already done with Bowie albums at this time. I'd had Ziggy Stardust, Hunky Dory, Pin Ups. You know, I had a few Bowie albums under my count. I had an Ian Dury album. I think I even might have had the first Toya album at this point. Um, and I was starting to be aware of Adam and the Ants. They released an album called Dirk Wears White Socks, and I remember buying. I had one of their singles, I think, Car Trouble, and then I went on to buy that. But then I was looking through their Nice Price rack, which was a little label that they call it Nice Price, and what it was albums that were a little bit cheaper on a sort of maybe cheaper label, because there was to be a cheaper label called Fame, so that and they were albums on that label were albums that have come out that weren't as successful as they should have been after about 6-7 months, and they got reproduced back out on a cheaper label at a cheaper price. And in there was Japan. And I thought, oh my god, that's the band I saw with Blue Oyster Cult, and it was this album. This isn't the version. This is the new remastered from the box set, which I have, and I finally got it signed, as you well know, by Richard Barberi there. Yeah, and it was Japan. I thought, he looks different, he looked really different there, because when I first saw him, he had all this shaggy hair. I thought, he's bought a hairbrush. I thought, he looks different. In fact, he looks older, because it looks like he's got grey hair, and I saw that. I wonder if they sound any different now, or what they're like on the record. So I brought it. It was £2.49. Yeah, that's right. It was £2.49, and I brought it. And I also bought another album that day. I'm trying to remember what it is. See, now, this is where my memory's messed up, because I can remember stuff like this, but I can't remember what I did yesterday. And I'm rubbish for sort of dates when it comes to concerts. But I think the concert thing is simply because I've seen so many bands, guys. I've been to thousands of concerts. I used to go weekly to concerts and stuff, because I was that close to London, and we used to see everyone play. And my local town had its own sort of venue, and all the bands used to come and play there in the sort of late 70s, early 80s. But yeah, I thought, I bought this album, and I bought another album. I'm trying to remember, guys, what it was, because it will bug me. It will bug me, and I'm sure it will come to me when I as I'm got Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. That's it. They had in there a Bonzo Dog Doodah band called Tadpoles, which was a yellow cover with a guy with funny glasses on. That's how I remember it, because I was picturing it. Yeah, Bonzo Dog Doodah band, who I'd already appreciated anyway because of their sort of connection with the Beatles. But yeah, they were fantastic, and I bought that as well. And that one was £1.99, and this was £2.49, so it was more pricey, this album. But I thought, it looks really cool, and I liked the back cover. I thought, the guy looks amazing. I didn't know the band names in even. Like I said, only connection I had with Japan was seeing them support the Blue Oyster Cult. So I bought the album, and I went home and I played the Bonzos, and I filed that into my record collection like that. My record collection was like that. I had one of those plastic cases, with like a little buckle on the front. You undid and lift it up. I had it. So I had about 10 to 15 albums at this point, which is quite a lot. And I had like half a dozen singles. But then again, I had about 10 singles without covers, because they were from the jukebox. So I had those, and I used to I used to make covers for them. I used to get bits of paper and cut them out. I used to get my normal 7-inch single, go round each sheet, back and front, put them together, sellotape, and I used to make my own covers and do pictures on it. So I made my own covers for those. I had things like Queen and stuff like that, and yeah, so it's crazy. But I didn't have the covers, but I had the records. So I filed it, and I thought, okay, I'll listen to that some other time when I'm in the mood for it, because I just thought I'm not really in the mood, because I remember not particularly liking them. And when I was almost in the stage thinking, should I take it back, because I've not played it or anything, and I don't think I'll. Because when I started to think about them, I thought, no, I didn't like their music. It was too sort of, it was a bit eccentric for me. It was rock and roll, but it weren't at the same time. It had a sort of like something different about it. But then I thought to myself, but hang on, you like Roxy Music. I had a Roxy Music album, I think. I can't remember which one it is I had. It's either Street Life. I think it was Street Life was the album I had. It was Naughty one with girls on it, with pretty much not much clothes on. And I bought that because I liked the cover. And I remember quite enjoying it. I thought, look, let's give them a go. So a couple of days later, out it comes. I took the record out. I thought, okay. So I took the record. This isn't the record. This is a remaster. And it was a different label. My one had a sort of like, it was white with almost like a sort of red sort of crosses across that way and cross that, and that the boat on it, the hands up boat, and it said on there, Fame, Japan, Quiet Life. And so I put it on, and my life changed. It just changed from that moment. I thought, wow, this is incredible. Quiet Life started up. Absolutely amazing. I thought, my God, this is like, it reminded me a lot of the soundtrack to the film Midnight Express, because my granddad was really into that film, and he brought the soundtrack to that, and I used to sit listening to it, and it sounded a lot like that, and it also sounded a lot like Donna Summer. You know, I Feel Love. But then I realised I think they've been working with George Moroder, something like that. I don't know if he worked with him on this album, but it had that feel to it, and it was brilliant. And then Fall in Love with Me come on, and it sounded like Roxy Music. I thought, cool. His voice is amazing. So it sounded nothing like it when I first saw it. I thought it sounded nothing like it at all. And I thought, okay, well, this is amazing. And then I fell in love with Japan on that day. And that must have been, I can't remember when it was. It must have been November or December of 1979, something like that, because it wasn't long until I bought my first Gary Newman record, which was Cars and Asylum. I remember buying that because I liked the cover. Again, I was very into covers, but I was young, guys, and I was easily swayed by cover. But this was amazing. I just thought, this is a fantastic album. So I went to FL Malls and paid £3.99 full price for this, Adolescent Sex. And I thought, okay, I'm going to buy this because this was their first album. And I took it home and played it. I thought, that's the Japan that I saw. But you know, I hadn't sort of put two and two together. You know, maybe bands change their sound, or maybe something isn't working, or maybe they've been influenced by something, and you know, or maybe the management told them that you need to change direction if you want to be successful. I don't know, but I thought, this is the Japan I remember. But after about, because I paid a lot of money for it, £3.99 was a lot of money then. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to keep playing it and see if I get to like it. And I did, to a point. I did start to like it a little bit, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to buy the other one, because they had another album out just after that one called Obscure Alternatives, which was this one, which I actually liked the cover of. I thought, that's really cool. I thought they were really, really cool. It's just, they were just sort of to change their image. And this was a lot more closer to this than that. This was still a bit weird. It was still a bit like their early stuff, but you could see the development in that. And I played that a lot. And I used to interact it. I'd play, and that sounds really weird, I'd play the A side, and then I'd play the B side. And then another day I'd play the A side and I'd play the B side. I used to mix them up. And that's how I got to fall in love with those albums, because mixing them up makes them sound incredible. And I kind of got that idea from another album that I bought, Ensemblage, which was a compilation album. This came out a bit later in their sort of, I think this might have come out after Gentleman Takes Polaroids. I think this was released on the back of Japan starting to become a bit more successful. I can't remember the year of this album. But anyway, I think it's about 1981. But they were starting to get a bit of success with their album. So I bought this, and I liked it because the first side was a compilation of songs from these two albums. And then the B side was all the sort of singles, if you will, from that weren't on the album. Life in Tokyo, European Sun. Oh, you even had Quiet Life on there. Look how old it looks now, guys. Look, the cover's even got coloration problems. And here it is, still on my vinyl. It's still in good nick, guys, you know. I don't know if this is a first print or original print or whatever. I don't know. I'm not into that. But this was released on Hansa Records, Hansa International. Yeah, and I bought this from FL Moores. And because of that side, A side, it made me want to revisit the first two albums. So I used to play them, like I said, the A side of Adolescent Sex and then the B side of Obscure Alternatives. And over the time, I started to fall in love with that sound. It was still different to what I was used to, but it was good. Getting used to their sound, I think, is one of the biggest hurdles to come with Japan. So yeah, buying records in that table was an affordable hobby. So it was easy to go down to your local shop and buy singles. I bought the singles of European Sun, Life in Tokyo, Second That Emotion. I bought Quiet Life single, and they were affordable, you know. And so I can't remember if I bought all Tomorrow's Parties. I don't think I did because I already had it on the album. And if I remember right, the B side was an album track. I can't remember, but I don't remember buying that. But then I just, I was quite happy to buy Japan albums and singles when they came out. I was loving the image. I thought they were fantastic. I hadn't really seen anything of them apart from pictures and stuff like that. And they started to turn up quite a bit in music press, and they were actually getting quite negative reviews in music press from Enemy and things like that. But their image was getting sort of exploding everywhere. Obviously, because David was was an attractive man, and the rest of the band were almost sort of pretty boy, weren't they? Sort of image going on. And you can see why the band must have influenced the new wave, new romantic scene. Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran. Duran Duran pretty much stole their image, if you think about it. And because when you look at a photo, if you look at the photo of their debut album, is it Planet Earth? I think the album, I'm not sure, but their debut album, and look at the back picture of Gentleman Totes Polaroids. It's like a replica of that photo. But yeah, they pretty much took the image, so they were really influential. They when I listen to them, I think I can hear them in so many things, like I know even weird things, even like Paul Young. Some of his songs, like you can hear like a fretless bass, and you think that sounds like Mick Karn. I thought because I thought he must have played on that. Obviously, Mick has done work with other people. He worked with Japan, Gary Newman and stuff like that. But yeah, and I could hear stuff in their music. Like I said to you before in my last video, you put on Planet Earth, listen to that. It's Quiet Life. It sounds just like Quiet Life. They pretty much stole Quiet Life. And you can see how it's influenced their image. Like I said, because they had changed their image to that. They had that. This is 79, guys. This is before the new romantic scene started, and they look like that. So you can think, yeah, Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, and Lady Diana. She must have stolen David's haircut. But yeah, but it's all stuff like that, and I'm just thinking, yeah, they've influenced so much. At the time, I didn't notice because that hadn't shown up yet. That new romantic scene, which we'll get onto in my next part of my journey of Japan. This is just my discovery of the band and buying my first records. From Boots, I bought Quiet Life and I bought Ensemblage. Ensemblage, this cost me £1.99 in the new the nice price section, because that was my go-to when I went to shops, was looking to see if I can get any cheap records. That's how I discovered things like I bought Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division because it was £2. It was in sale in FL Moores for about £2.29, so I bought it. Singles weren't too bad because you could pick singles up for about 40p, 45p, and I used to, go through the singles first. Boots was the best one for singles, because they would have on the behind the counter, like I've got my posters, they'd have like the charts all along there, like the top 40, and you could see the covers, and you think, oh, I like that cover, I'll buy that one. And I say, yeah, can I have number 6, number 14, number 20? Yeah, gonna have number 1 as well. I used to try and buy the hit single at the time and stuff like that. And that's why I ended up with records like by Haircut 100 and all these sort of wonderful sort of bands, Aztec Camera and all this sort of stuff, and Tears for Fears, just simply because I will do some Tears for Fears videos soon, just because it was like, yeah, I like the covers and stuff like that, and they're quite high in the charts, but yeah, but Japan, I bought the 2 albums from Boots, but my singles I bought from FL Mall, just because they didn't really get to the top 40 at this stage, and they weren't in there. But in FL Malls, they used to have on their desk, they'd have the top 75 singles like cut out of a magazine. It must have been a sort of trade magazine, and it would be in like a piece of plastic on there, and I'd go through it and I'd have a look, and it'd say new entry. It was a new entry, Japan, European Sun. Have you got that? European Sun? Yeah, of course. I'll have that, please. So I bought my singles from there, and that was how I started to get into Japan. And then I just listened to the records. Quiet Life I bought 2 times, just because I scratched the first one. But I think it's just because I played it so much, and I think I might have tripped over me record player, because I used to put it on the floor. It was one of those suitcase ones. I was young, so I just tripped up, and it started to crack on a few tracks. So I went out and bought another copy, which was a bit more pricey, but I got it from FL Malls later on. Obviously now I own it on the remastered. I don't own the vinyls. Well, I do own that one. I have the remastered CD of it now, but I also own the Super Deluxe box set of Quiet Life now, which I was really excited when this came out. I thought, here we go. This is released by BMG. BMG recently have just picked up a contract with Gary Newman, and they released a Berserker one in a clamshell. So I'm hoping we'll get some more of Gary's old stuff, but when they released this, I thought, here we go, we're going to get some Japan re-releases. I wasn't expecting Gentleman Takes Polaroids of Tin Drum, but I thought we might have got these out of collection. I mean, they could do a Super Deluxe with them both in there, right? And maybe add like a concert or whatever you can put in there. Ensemblage would do pretty well on its own. They could do it by extending it with other mixes and stuff like that. The only problem is they've probably done most of it with that box set. But there we are. They only released Quiet Life, but it's a classic album, and that's how I started to fall in love with Japan. I didn't like them when I first saw them. I didn't like the music very much. David's voice was too rocky. It was too Rod Stewarty, like I was saying. I didn't know. Like I said, I just sort of saw them. I thought, yeah, they're okay. When I went to school and I talked to them, friends at school, what do you do? I went to a concert with the Blue Oyster Cult. What are they like? I thought, no, rubbish. I said, the support band were better. What are they called? I said, Japan. I said, no one's ever heard of them. I hadn't heard of them, and I forgot all about them until I was looking in Boots. Nice price. Massive shout out to my lad. See you soon, guys.